Hello, historians. Today we are going to talk about bias in history and how you can tell when a historian is biased. And to do that, we are going to talk about a historical figure named Charlemagne. But before we start talking about Charlemagne, we should talk about bias. So, what is bias? Bias is a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group, usually in a way that is considered to be unfair. So, what is prejudice? Prejudice is an opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. Prejudice can be positive when you assume good things about someone, or negative when you assume bad things about someone. Every single historian is biased, including you and me. Bias is a natural tendency of humans to be comfortable with what we're familiar with. This is not always a bad thing, though. It can be bad when our bias keeps us from learning new things. In this class, our goal is to set aside some of our biases to dig into real, truthful information. But how do you know when your sources are biased? There's positive bias and negative bias, and one way that you can tell this is using word choice. So you may be able to tell how the author of an article feels about their subject by their word choice. When reading in history, you may come across words like hero, great, and accomplishment. These are all words that may show a positive bias or show that the person writing the article thinks about their subject in a positive light. Can you think of any more examples of what could be a positive bias? In history, there is also, on the other hand, words like villain and violence. These words could show that the person writing the article thinks about the subject in a negative light. Can you think of any words that might show a negative light? Even if you can't, you're going to find some today. You will get 3 articles. You will highlight the words that make Charlemagne seem like a good person in one color, and highlight the words that make Charlemagne seem like a bad person in another color. So, another way to make sure that a source is goodness. One way to make sure a source is reliable is to make sure that it's credible. Credibility is the quality of being trusted and believed in. So, how do we make sure a source is credible? Number one, you want to make sure you know who the source is from. Number two, you want to make sure citations for the source are used. Number three, you want up to date information for your topic. And number four, you want an unbiased analysis of the topic. So, for example, the author examines more than one perspective on the issue. So, I'll give you a second to pause, write these down, and then we'll go on to our next box. Another way to check is to make sure it's reliable. There are 2 main ways to make sure a source is reliable. Number one is if it's accurate. Compare the author's information to what you already know is reliable. Are there proper citations? Is the information biased? How do you know if it's biased? And then you have number two, coverage. Is the information relevant to your topic and does it meet your needs? Your needs in social studies are the questions that are asked about each article. Does this article help you answer the questions? So, all you need to write down for reliability is number one, accuracy, and number two, coverage. You don't have to write any of the sentences after. So, as I mentioned before, today you are going to read 3 short articles about Charlemagne to determine whether he was a hero or a villain. Before you begin, we are going to take some notes to get some background information on the man. So fill in the blank notes. We'll start on the next slide, so grab your pencils. So, introduction. As leader of the kingdom of the Franks, Charlemagne united many of the Christian lands of Western Europe during the Middle Ages. He was declared the emperor of this collection of states, which eventually became to be called the Holy Roman Empire. He was a great warrior, but he also respected and preserved learning. His name means Charles the Great. His vast empire did not remain intact long after his death, but during his reign, the traditions of civilizations like the Romans were revived after having been almost forgotten. So, your blanks on this slide are number 1, Franks, number 2, Holy Roman Empire, and number 3, Charles the Great. So, Europe in the Dark Ages. When people use the term medieval times, Middle Ages, and Dark Ages, they're generally referring to the same period of time. The Dark Ages is usually referring to the first half of the Middle Ages, from 500 CE to 1000 CE. After the fall of the Roman Empire, a lot of the Roman culture and knowledge was lost. This included art, technology, engineering, and history. Historians know a lot about Europe during the Roman Empire because the Romans kept excellent records on what happened. However, the time after the Romans is quote unquote dark to historians because there was no central government recording events. This is why some historians call this time the Dark Ages. So, early life of Charlemagne. Charlemagne was born as Charles in about 742 CE. He was the elder son of Pippin III. Unlike most people of his day, Charles learned to read. He also formed a lifelong devotion to the Christian church. Charles's father became king of the Franks in 751. At that time, Europe consisted of many independent kingdoms that had grown up after the Roman Empire collapsed in the 400s. The Franks occupied what is now France and some of the surrounding regions. Pippin's army aided the Pope, who was the head of the church, in several campaigns against a tribe called the Lombards. Young Charles learned from his father's efforts. So your blanks on this slide are 8, 742 CE, 9, Christian Church, 10, France, and 11, Lombards. So conquests. In 768, Charlemagne and his brother Carloman inherited the kingdom of the Franks. In 771, Carloman died, and Charlemagne became the sole ruler of the kingdom. At that time, the northern half of Europe was still disorganized and lawless. In the south, the Roman Catholic Church was striving to assert its power against the Lombard kingdom in Italy. In Charlemagne's own realm, the Franks were falling back culturally and neglecting their education and religion. Charlemagne began to conquer other tribes around him. Charlemagne met defeat in northern Spain against the Muslims in 1778, but he defeated the Lombards in Italy and eventually the Saxons of central Germany. Charlemagne made his capital in western Germany at Aachen, known to the French as Aix-la-Chapelle, and Charlemagne then attempted to restore much of the unity of the old Roman Empire. So your blanks on this slide are 12, soul, 13, neglecting, 14, conquer, 15, Aachen. So Charlemagne was determined to strengthen his realm and to bring order to Europe. In 772, he launched a 30-year campaign that conquered and brought Christianity to the powerful Saxons of the north. He subdued the Avars, a huge Tartar tribe on the Danube. He compelled rebellious Bavarian dukes to submit to him. When possible, Charlemagne preferred to settle matters peacefully, however. For example, he offered to pay the Lombard king Desiderius for return of lands to the Pope. When Desiderius refused, Charlemagne seized his kingdom from 773 to 774 and restored the Papal States. And the Papal States are where the Pope lives. So, your blanks on this slide are 16, order, 17, Christianity, and 18, peacefully. The key to Charlemagne's conquest was his ability to organize. During his reign, he sent out more than 50 military expeditions. He rode as commander at the head of at least half of them. He moved his armies very quickly over wide reaches of country, but every move was planned heavily in advance. Before a campaign, he told the counts, princes, and bishops throughout his realm how many men they should bring, how many men they should bring, what arms or weapons they were to carry, and even what to load in the supply wagons. So your blanks on this are 19, organize, 20, 50, 21, planned, and 22, told. So, what was he actually like? We've heard a lot about his rule, his military life, but what was he like as a person? Well, Charlemagne's character was contradictory. This means that some people think he was good, but some people think he was bad. In an age when the usual penalty for defeat was death, Charlemagne several times spared the lives of his defeated foes. Yet, in 782 at Verdun, after a Saxon uprising, he ordered 4,500 Saxons to be beheaded. He compelled the clergy and nobles to reform, but he divorced two of his four wives without any cause. He forced kings and princes to kneel at his feet, yet his mother and his two favorable wives often overruled him in his own household. Finally, he was crowned emperor. On Christian Day, in the year 800, Charlemagne went to Mass at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome and was worshipped by his subjects. On this occasion, Pope Leo III placed a gold crown on his head and proclaimed him to be the Emperor of the West, anointing him with oil to complete the ceremony. Charlemagne is said to have been surprised by this coronation, declaring that he would have not come to the church if he had known the Pope's plan. However, some historians say that the Pope would not have dared to act without Charlemagne's knowledge. The coronation was the foundation of the Holy Roman Empire. Though Charlemagne did not use the title, he is considered to be the first Holy Roman Emperor. So, influence. Charlemagne was a great reformer. He set up a money system to promote trade, built roads and bridges, and encouraged better farming methods. He especially worked to spread education and Christianity in every class of people. He revived the palace school at Aachen, Austria, now in Germany, which was his capital. He set up other schools, opening them to peasant boys as well as nobles. Charlemagne never stopped studying. He brought an English monk and other scholars to his court. At meals, instead of having jesters perform, he listened to men reading from learned works. Charlemagne died in 814 and was succeeded by his son Louis. Louis died in 840, and his three sons split up the empire. Even so, the Holy Roman Empire survived, in one form or another, for nearly 1,000 years. So what role did Charlemagne have in the rise, fall, and/or transformation of society during the beginning of the Middle Ages? Charlemagne had a lot to do with the rise and transformation of the Middle Ages. He unified Europe in a way that hadn't been done since the Roman Empire. Remember, by this time, Europe was split into many, many different civilizations. He unified much of Europe under the Holy Roman Empire. As a leader, he made a new money system, encouraged people to farm in healthier ways, and worked to spread Christianity across the empire. So, here are your instructions for our assignment today, called Charlemagne, Hero or Villain. You're going to read the 3 articles passed out in class today. As you read, you're going to highlight in one color any positively biased words. You're also going to highlight in a different color any negatively biased words. After you read each article, fill out the chart on the Charlemagne hero or villain assignment. And that is it for today.